2 nights before my 16th birthday, my parents tried to kill me. I walked through the door after the homecoming game, and there they were, standing with a dozen gray suits, guns drawn and pointed directly at me. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. You should know the full story, or at least my name to start. Hello, Avocado Elementary. My name is John Wells III, and I'm the author of the upcoming series, The Caleb Andrews Chronicles. That was an excerpt from the first chapter of my first book, Caleb Andrews, The Last Angel Warrior. I am so excited to talk to you today about what it's like to be an author. So I thought I'd start, from the beginning. I started writing when I was probably about your age in elementary school. I used to write comic books with my friends, and I used to write short stories. I remember one day I even wrote a book report which ended up being a little short story. Now, I got in trouble for that because it wasn't the assignment, but I could not turn off my creative mind when I was young. And I'm thankful for parents who actually encouraged me to continue writing and to continue being creative. I used to get so lost as a kid that I would read the Animorph books, which were a book series that I loved in elementary school. And I would think that I was an Animorph. So it fits that I ended up being an author and an actor. I want to talk a little bit about my process with the book. And I started writing the Caleb Andrews series about 12 years ago when I was in college. And I would write and then I would do school. And I didn't really focus on it too much. But when I got out of college, I decided, you know what? I really want to finish this story. And I sat and I finished the entire book. And then I realized, okay, I'm done. What do I do with this? So I decided, all right, I'm going to send it to an editor. And I sent it to the editor, and the editor sent it back to me and said, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on this. And I said, okay. And he said, but don't worry, that's okay. The first draft is never the final draft. You always have to continue working on it. So I rewrote it and I sent it to beta readers. And beta readers read your script, read your manuscript, and they tell you what they liked about it and what they didn't. So I took the notes from the beta readers and I rewrote it again. Yes, I rewrote my book, the whole book, several times until it was at a place where I felt that, you know what, I think this is the story. Now, what I wrote back in 2008 and what I have here on my Kindle are two completely different things. But it's because when you write and when you rewrite, you learn to refine and to make things a little bit better. And sometimes it changes entire chapters. Sometimes it only changes a word. But remember, whenever you're being creative, change is good. I want to read you a little bit more from my book, but I also want to encourage you to continue writing and continue working on whatever makes you happy. Anything that you are passionate about, any dreams that you have, continue to keep working for that and keep doing it. But remember, nothing worth having is easy. There's always going to be a work that has to be done. But I believe that all of you at Avocado Elementary are great hard workers, and I know that you will do great things. Well, let's hear a little bit more about what happens with Caleb Andrews in the first chapter of his book. Chapter 1, The Shadow Man. 2 nights before my 16th birthday, my parents tried to kill me. I walked through the door after the homecoming game, and there they were, standing with a dozen gray suits, guns drawn and pointed directly at me. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. You should know the full story, or at least my name to start. I'm Caleb Andrews, and a month ago, I was a normal kid living in Haynesville, Georgia. If you know anything about the town, you know who I am. But no one has ever cared about Haynesville. And until recently, no one gave 2 wet nickels about who I was. That all changed when he came to town. The first time I saw him was at the Georgia Peach Diner. I was working the weekend mid-shift when my best friend Tristan beelined toward me, bumping into tables and knocking over condiments as he ran. His red hair and pale face matched the red and white uniform we were forced to wear at work. "Caleb, that's him," he said, his mouth next to my ear, his hand clasping my shoulder. "That's the man who's been following me." The man was sitting 3 booths back on the other side of the diner, my section. It was rare for someone new to come into town unnoticed. Haynesville wasn't a particularly large town. The only new people that turned up were usually here to visit Raventech, the large technology company at the edge of town. Whenever someone new moved into town, people talked. Tristan took gossiping about newcomers to a whole new level. He was a Class A nutcase. He always babbled on about conspiracy theories and our imminent doom. The week before, he'd convinced himself the government was tracking everyone through their smartphones. The week before that, it was something about TV and auto-suggestions brainwashing us to think what they wanted us to think. This was just the latest in a long list of conspiracy theories. Apparently, the man looked at him funny on the street earlier that day as he walked into work. "I'm telling you, Caleb, there's something weird about that guy," Tristan said. Then, suddenly shoving me with his elbow, "Quit staring! You're gonna draw his attention!" "Relax," I sighed, rolling my eyes and reaching for the next order. I've got to give the guy his pie. I was running a little late that day. Someone else had already given the man his coffee. I grabbed a slice of pie from the counter and pushed past my friend, humored by his overreaction. Up until that point, the day had gone as normally as any. The diner was dotted with the same faces having the same conversations. Damien Doslick was slumped over his grilled cheese sandwich at the end of the bar. "Don't bother me," practically written across his face. Mr. and Mrs. Abernathy sat at a booth in the back corner by the window, looking out and bickering about the weather as usual. Mr. Jones, the CEO of Raventech, sat opposite the Abernathys with his daughter, Kalia, on their weekly family outing. And then there was the stranger. I realized then he had his eyes glued on me as I made my way across the diner. "Your pie, sir," I said, presenting the plate. That's when things got weird. "Thank you, Caleb," he said. The edges of his lips curled. His smile looked forced and unnatural. I looked down at my chest to see if I was wearing a name tag. I wasn't. "How did you know my name?" "You're Mayor Donovan's kid," he said with feigned nonchalance as he pried the plate from my hands. I heard the slightest hint of an accent. Not too strong, but enough to notice it was there. I squinted. "What is that? Irish?" "I've seen you in pictures. You don't move into a new town without doing your research." He picked up his fork, cutting into the flaky crust of the peach pie. "Oh, yeah," I muttered, ignoring the growing knot in my stomach. "Caleb Donovan, right?" The stranger spoke as if he just remembered my name, but even this sounded well rehearsed. The fork scraped across the plate en route to his mouth. "Andrews, actually," I corrected. "I go by Caleb Andrews." "Oh." The man bobbed his head up and down. "That's right. You're adopted. I think I read that somewhere." "Well, it's very nice to meet you, Caleb." I tried to swallow, but my mouth was too dry to allow it. "Research," he said. "More like stalking. Who is this man?" I mean, sure, a person would have to be blind not to know I didn't look like Donald and Susan Donovan. Anyone with eyes could see I was adopted. It wasn't just my appearance either. Aside from the contrast of my bright blue eyes, curly brown hair, and mocha-colored skin, with their straight hair, slightly pink complexion, I had simply never felt like their son. I suppose that's why I never called them mom or dad. It had never felt right. The Donovans, both of them, were about politics and appearance. I, on the other hand, never fit that mold. I learned young that I didn't care for politicians. They always seemed to be talking in circles, never saying what they meant. I preferred honesty. I could always tell when someone was hiding something. And it seemed, as I would soon find out, my family was hiding a lot. "Now that's an interesting necklace," the stranger said, dabbing the sides of his mouth with his napkin. I reached for the pendant which hung from my neck, passing it between my fingers. I was used to people asking about the necklace. It was a unique piece of jewelry, a silver triangle with swirls circling inward from each corner, holding a blue stone at the center of it. I wasn't sure what kind of stone it was, but I assumed it was valuable. But what most people were curious about were the strange silver symbols engraved into the stone. The symbols wrapped around the pendant, so every angle revealed a different, mysterious image when you looked at it. What are those inscriptions? The man asked. They looked foreign. Do you know what they mean? Oh, no, I don't, I admitted. It's a family heirloom, I think. I've always had it anyway. The man's eyes locked in the pendant for a moment. Then, meeting my confused gaze, he asked, a family heirloom from Andrews, you mean? Maybe it was the way he said it, or the way he leaned forward on his elbows, eyes locked on mine, his foot tapping anxiously under the table. Something about this man didn't sit well with me. A voice inside me said, "Get out." Yeah, I whispered, so intimidated I could barely push the word out. Have you met him? His voice seemed to drop in volume, as if telling a secret. No, I admitted. All I have is his picture and his name. The stranger considered me for a moment. Blue's a good color on you, he said, clearing his throat. It matches the color of your eyes. Well, I should be getting back to work. It was a pleasure to meet you, Caleb, the man said, extending his hand. Thank you. You too. I reached out, and the moment my hand touched his, I felt something, as if 1,000 insects scuttled up my arm. Voices, whispering voices filled my head, thousands of them. My legs turned to putty and I fell. I fell through a dark, endless void as the whispers erupted into a singular chorus, a deep, rumbling laugh, and a voice, rising from deep within my mind, said, though death and magic and fire rehashed, the blood of the angel warrior shall be paid at last. Well, that's all for now. But I want to encourage you all to continue to be as creative as possible. For me, my journey started when I was your age, writing in school. For you, it can start wherever you want. I just encourage you that whatever you love doing, do it, finish it, and be the best you that you can be. I know that you can. I hope that you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful time. I'll talk to you later. See you later, Avocado Elementary.